A very warm welcome to all of you joining us today. My name is David Hewen, and on behalf of the team at Garrett Publishing, we're so grateful that you've chosen to spend some time with us and our fantastic panel tonight. We have people from all over Australia and around the globe, so welcome. We at Garrett choose to begin all our webinars and events by acknowledging the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of Australia and acknowledge their ongoing connection to the land. I join you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people here in Naarm, better known now as Melbourne. I pay my respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders, both past and present, and I recognise their wisdom of their land and their cultural knowledge. We at Garrett strive to do our best to actively work alongside Indigenous people for reconciliation and justice, addressing historical injustices and promoting a more equitable future. It's hard to fathom that it's been 10 years since Pope Francis released his encyclical Laudato Si on care for our common home. During these 10 years, Laudato Si has become more than the title of a Pope Francis encyclical. It's become a movement. Tonight's webinar is the first of 4 we have planned exploring Pope's seminal work this year. As we explore Laudato Si tonight and focus on how young people within the church have been doing Laudato Si for 10 years and what their plans and dreams are for the future. Before we get started in earnest, there's a few administrative matters. The chat function has been activated. The host, me, and the panelists, Alice, Jemima, and Rebecca, can see your comments, but the rest of the people on the webinar can't. Those seeking accreditation, I would ask that you place your name and your email, the email that you registered for these sessions preferably, into the chat box. We will be recording and recognising your professional development hours. For those who are not seeking any accreditation, you're not a teacher or the like, no need to put your name if you don't wish. The webinar tonight will be recorded and a video will be sent to you in the next week. Questions are welcome and place them in the chat box. We'll do our best to answer your questions and respond to any comments throughout tonight's session. We aim to finish in about an hour, and to that end, I wish to introduce you to Alice Carwardine, because if I don't stop talking, we'll get to the hour pretty quickly. Alice works in the mission formation team at the Edmund Rice Christian Brothers Oceania province. She holds a master's degree in theology with a focus in eco-theology, reflecting her passion for the intersection between faith and care for the planet. In 2018, after successfully transitioning to a zero-waste lifestyle, Alice began sharing her knowledge and experience by running professional development workshops for schools. She's a trained teacher in physics and study of religion. Previously, Alice was the National Coordinator for Caritas Catholic Earth Care Program here in Australia, and I was a member of the Laudato Si Action Platform Working Group, collaborating with the Dicastery for Promotion of Human Integral Development and to implement Pope Francis's environmental encyclical. She was also a member of the Synod writing team for the Brisbane Archdiocese. Alice, over to you.
Thank you, David. And it's really lovely to see. I know there are some people that are attending tonight that I can see who I have met through work, especially my work with Catholic Earth Care, and it is a pleasure to be online with you again. So it's really lovely to see you all. So we're going to begin this evening just with a short prayer. I would also like to acknowledge that I am situated, and also Jemima is situated, on Yagra country up here in Brisbane. And if you are a Brisbaneite, we'll be finishing at 7 p.m, not at 8 p.m.
Beg your pardon.
So, no, right. Yeah, hey, Belinda. Yeah, so I just wanted to open up with a prayer, which we'll share with shortly. I'm just going to pose two questions that I would like you to reflect on, and you can feel free to use the chat if you would like to write a response to this as well. But the video that we're going to view in a moment for our reflection shows young people from all around the world and their fears and worries and concerns about the changing climate. And I just want you to take the time this evening to really think about young people who are in your life, whether they are the students that are in your classrooms or in the playground, and the ones who are making change, the ones who are pushing for change, the ones that are the demanding change. Who are they, and what are their interests? And yeah, so thinking about those kids as we watch this short little film. It only goes for 3 minutes.
Can you tell me in your own words how you see the climate crisis affecting your country? What do you see is happening?
Cyclone Winston was the strongest cyclone ever struck Fiji. I saw houses blown away. Our school was destroyed.
I was visiting family back in Northern California when the Paradise Fire broke out. I had to roll up wet towels, put them under windows and doors, since the smoke was seeping into my home.
We heard voices screaming outside. We just stand outside praying for the fire not to reach our homes.
Many people died.
Our farms were destroyed. Our crops were washed away.
I really saw like flooding and ice kept melting.
The summers are really, really hot.
The snow melts immediately.
In the rainy seasons, when it should rain, it doesn't rain.
And sometimes it's raining that much that the river comes up to danger mark.
Every time we have these heavy rains, our school closes.
The economy is really impacted.
All the memories that were made in that place, like the places where we used to have fun and enjoy, are slowly disappearing.
I was on school and then I heard about climate change.
I saw many people talking about it on social media.
I started to see how communities were being impacted all around the world. And then I was asking myself, like, what was happening?
I just wanted to contribute and help out.
Who inspired me was Greta Thunberg. Greta and her movement.
She's just straight to the point and she's not afraid to speak up for what she believes.
My name is Greta Thunberg. I am 16 years old and I'm a climate activist from Sweden. I learned more and more about how serious the situation was. I couldn't understand why everyone else was just continuing like before, not doing anything, not caring about this.
We deserve a safe future, and we demand a safe future. Is that really too much to ask?
The boys and the girls are like us kids, and they don't really take us seriously.
Some people, they don't even think about it.
They're saying, oh, you're too young for this. You're not supposed to be doing this.
They don't really understand the climate crisis, so they need to know the climate science. What keeps me going despite the challenges is that I'm in solidarity with so many activists all around the world, all the other activists who are fighting every day. I think they inspire me a lot.
I want other young people not to think of how young are they or how small are they.
We can do something about this if we really want to make a change. It's about like every person individually.
Our future, the kids' future, will be affected.
It's happening right now. We're already late on our schedule.
We live in the same planet.
We have to come together. It's not an option.
As the climate crisis continues to get more urgent, we want you to all take action as well and make your voices heard too. I don't want to just stand aside and watch. I want to participate. I want to push as hard as I can in the right direction. And I've just decided to do everything I can.
So I'm sure for many of us, as I said, there's probably kids that are in front of us in classrooms that have similar passions and concerns. One of the girls who's on that little short talks about the schools closing due to the extreme weather. And I know since we've had two tropical cyclone lows come through Brisbane in the last month. There's been so many school closures just in this period, in term one. It's been insane. And it really is impacting on education, but that's a story for another time. But just to close our prayer, I just wanted to ask our Creator God to guide and watch over our students and our young people and continue to empower them and bring them hope. Amen. And just a short introduction, I suppose, to us gathering today. So I've invited along Jemima and Rebecca to this webinar this evening to talk about a book that we all actually contributed to called Generation Laudato Si, which David will share with you how you can get a hold of at the end of the webinar. But I'm just going to give a short introduction to both of these two fantastic women who I've been able to work alongside in various capacities over the last couple of years. So starting with Jemima. Jemima currently works as a Women's Leadership Development Associate. Sorry, that was your past job at Mercy Global Action that was based in the United Nations in New York. And she's also on the board of directors for All Hallows in Brisbane. And Jemima has a very strong interest in impact investing and is committed to creating positive social and environmental change. In 2022, Jemima was honoured as a Mercy Global Action Emerging Leaders Fellow, which I know Rebecca was also part of that program as well, further demonstrating her leadership potential and dedication to global issues. And we'll talk about some of her work in that this evening as well. Her diverse roles reflect her commitment to leadership, education, and sustainable development. And Jemima, I just wanted to start by just quickly asking you, because I know you've been just come off mat leave and have been looking for a new job. And I actually wanted to know if you have a new role yet to share with us.
Nothing as yet. I've got a few things in the works. For my primary role at the moment is looking after my 8-year-old son, who's well and truly running the house at the moment.
Yeah, he's beautiful, little Monty. Cool. So that's Jemima. And then we were also joined by Rebecca, who has kindly joined us early in the morning, all the way from the Vatican, where her place of work is. But Rebecca was born and raised in Hamilton, Canada. She's currently working in Vatican City as the Officer for Promoting Youth Leadership for Caritas Internationalis, which was how we met, was through my work at Caritas, the official humanitarian aid and development, International Development Confederation of the Catholic Church. In this role, she develops and coordinates a global strategy to engage and empower young people who work and volunteer for Caritas around the world, and accompanies Caritas member organizations and regions to effectively and meaningfully engage youth. She is the co-editor of Generation Laudato Si, which is the book we're talking about tonight. And it describes a movement that collects the reflections, hopes, and actions of young people across the world who have been inspired by Laudato Si to care for creation. She also has a Master of Global Affairs degree from the Monk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy at the University of Toronto, and she is passionate about social and ecological justice, youth empowerment, and equal representation in global structures. So it's really awesome to have you both here and to in some ways, catch up with both of you as well. So I just wanted to start by asking a few questions, and I know there will be questions that come through in the chat. So as people come up with things, we might divert to a few of those. But I don't really mind who jumps in first, but I just wanted to ask the first question: what is the impact that Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si has had on your life? So who wants to go first? Now you got to fight over it.
Both of us are deferring to each other.
Yeah.
I'll step in and take this one for the team. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to join you this evening. I'm here in a very rainy Brisbane, and as Alice says, we've just had a cyclone, so this feels very poignant. So how has Laudato Si changed my life? Well, it's and I apologize. I think my bandwidth is not great here. It could be all the rain we've had.
Doing okay.
So we'll see how we go. I think the way that Laudato Si has changed my life has been inviting this synergy between my faith and my understanding and I guess flourishing within the natural environment. So I think prior to being introduced to Laudato Si in my work and also in my faith and wider community, I thought of the natural environment as something, or our planet as something separate. And we're sort of talking in concepts here, but I thought of it as something separate to faith. It's something we had to take care of and we had collective responsibility over. But I saw it as very much, it is something we need to protect and conserve rather than something to which we all intimately belong and we're just a very minor part of. So I think during my childhood, I had this very instinctive reverence for the natural environment, for our world. And I was always drawn to the outdoors. I, would spend entire rolls of film taking photos of trees. And I had this sort of belief that there was the sacred in the natural world. And I guess being introduced to Laudato Si gave me this framework through which to make sense of this emerging idea of actually maybe there's more to it than just protection or conservation. Maybe we are all intimately connected, and that sort of led me along the path towards cosmology. And it really resonated very deeply with these things I had felt instinctively as a child, but not being able to put any name towards. So this idea that faith or spirituality was realized through engagement with the natural world, that we are just one part of God, however you see God, just one part of God's wider frame of reference. So this very expansive view of faith. And for me, that was a turning point because my faith, my Catholic faith in a traditional institutional sense had been dwindling. And there was nothing really firm I could grasp as speaking to me within that faith. And cosmology and Laudato Si and the connection with Catholic social teaching sort of reignited this awareness of faith in action and faith being all around us, and God being all around us. So it's brought a lot of comfort to me. It's been the bedrock of my spirit, sort of my adult spirituality, and something that is very special to me. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Jemima.
Thanks, Jemima. And I'll echo Jemima's thanks to say, that I really appreciate being with you today. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to join. It's not as early as Dave made it out to seem. It's 10:20 a.m. here. So, although I am not a morning person, so even this time, but it's certainly not so bad. But I am very grateful to be here. So thank you so much. And actually, my answer to this question is very, very similar to yours, Jemima. I would say that Laudato Si has made the connection between my faith and my passion for taking care of the earth a little more concrete, because my faith has always been an important part of my life, and taking care of the environment has also actually always been an important part of my life. I remember when I was a kid, I used to make all these like Save the Whales posters. I don't even know what I wanted to save them from, like little kids that bang on glass. This was obviously inspired by Free Willy. Seminal work of cinema. But, I always do remember, even from a very young age, taking care of the environment be very important to me, and enjoying being in nature and feeling a responsibility to take care of it. And to be honest, I've been trying to remember how I thought of these two things together before Laudato Si was written, but I'm coming up empty. So I say in this period of my 20s and early 30s, as I'm growing in my faith, as we all do throughout our whole lives, I'm really glad to have had Laudato Si as a resource to guide my reflections on what does it mean for me to be a Christian, and how do I live out my faith? Because in this very formative time, I've really come to see caring for creation in this three-pronged way that we now label as integral ecology, being in right relationship with nature, with my neighbor, and with God. And I see caring for creation as an integral part of my life as a Christian now, and as a responsibility that I have if I call myself a Christian in our world today. So I wouldn't say it's made me care for the earth more than I already did, per se, because there wasn't a point in my life that I didn't care for the earth. But it certainly had an influence in me filing my ecological efforts under Christian in my brain and in my heart, I would say.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I think for like the same or similar stories, for a lot of us it's the same narrative. So I think it's just a testament to how much the document really has, just concreted all of our faiths, which is amazing. Rebecca, I might stay with you if that's okay, just to ask you what inspired you and Simon, who's the other co-editor, to write these amazing stories of young people in Generation Laudato Si and to bring it together in this amazing book.
Sure. So Simon approached me back in 2020. This was definitely a COVID project. And what's interesting is actually Simon and I have never met in person. We always say we should try, and but have not managed to yet. So this was definitely a labor of love over COVID. We were vaguely on each other's radars from the time that I worked for Caritas Canada, and he knew that I was doing youth work with Caritas Internationalis. And so he reached out to me to ask if I wanted to write a book with him about young people and Laudato Si. So we had a Zoom call, and in that chat, I proposed that rather than he and I writing things on behalf of young people, that we make a book that would be a platform for young people to speak for themselves and share in their own voice as young people, as influenced by their culture, their reflections and stories and hopes about caring for creation. And that's, of course, what it ended up turning into. So the rationale of this was to counter sort of common trend, let's say, where young people are sometimes consulted, but not given the mic to speak for themselves. This is slowly changing. You see it in more spaces, and it's something that certainly we work on a lot in Caritas. But for us, it was really important to send the message to young people that your message in your voice matters. And everyone else, it's up to everyone else, young and old, to listen to you. So that's where the format came from. And luckily, I have some pretty extensive connections among young people who are working on these issues, especially from a faith perspective because of my work. So tracking down people who were willing to contribute was not as hard as it could have been. It was still challenging. It was like herding cats at sometimes, but it was that was how we found the people to write, and then through them found other connections. So ultimately, what Simon and I wanted to share with the world is that young people are so important in our efforts to care for creation and to care for each other. They're bold, they're brave, they're creative, and they're so hopeful. And they're adding so much to the process of caring for creation as young people. And they have a lot to say as young people. And all of us would be very enriched if we would stop to listen to what they have to say and allow our own reflections and actions to be guided by their experience and their perspective.
Yeah. Like because I was offered the opportunity to write the foreword for the Australian copy when Garrett decided to publish it. So I got to read all of the stories beforehand, which was just fantastic. And I remember sitting there reading them all, being just blown away by how much work is happening and how much really, really great stuff. And it really did fill me with a lot of hope as well, that so much amazing things were happening. And one of those contributors was Jemima, who wrote one of the articles that's in there. So I'll ask you now, Jemima. So in the text that you wrote, the article that's in there, you mentioned that you wrote your guide called Money as Mercy, which I think I was able to grab a copy online. So I think it's floating around somewhere if you want to get a copy of that as well. But that, like, I read that as well, and it looks almost like a work of a PhD, like there's so much in it. So in the guide, you share a lot about the impact economy and impact investing, which I know you're very passionate about. But some of the people in the audience may not be familiar with what those terms mean and sort of where they fit in with the Catholic faith. So can you, just share a bit about that for everyone to know?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alice. And if I could circumvent the whole study process of a PhD and just get the title anyway, that'd be great. But so just to give some context, in the book Generation Laudato Si, I reference this guide, Money as Mercy. And I wrote Money as Mercy as the final product of a big research project that I undertook while participating in the Mercy Global Action Emerging Leaders Fellowship. So that was the inaugural cohort, and there were 9 of us, 9 women from around the world, and it was a leadership program. And we sort of had to draw on something of interest to us or something from our background and explore it further and really tease it out over a period of a year. And it had to relate in some way to faith and leadership and Laudato Si or Catholic social teaching. So I was working at the time in the field of impact investing, and I've still retained some links in that area, and I am still very interested in impact investing and that economy. And I wanted to show how I think in faith circles, money is a dirty word. We've come to think of money and commercial transactions and the world of the economy as being something separate to faith. And we're constantly trying to kind of shove them together and make them fit. And it can feel bumpy. But I wanted to show how actually the economy is of our making, and as such, it is a construct. It can be constructed a different way, reconstructed, if you like, to better reflect the values that we hold dear. So I created this guide as a way of introducing people who were unfamiliar with the impact economy to that concept and the mechanisms of it and examples, etc., but also to show those working within the impact economy that there were these large swathes, these large communities and swathes of people around the world who are people of faith and want to do good with their money, and are looking for ways to do good with their money and don't really know where to go to do that. So I tried to kind of bridge the two, if you like. In the guide, I guess I have a few terms that I throw around, and I do go into more detail about what they are, but just as a high-level reference for anyone who doesn't know, impact investing, you've probably heard of. It's basically investing with the conscious intention to do good or create impact alongside making a financial return. So it's not charity and it's not philanthropy. It is very much traditional investing, but the desire to create a positive benefit has to equal or outweigh the need to make a financial return. But there is still very much the financial return element in there. So some examples of impact investing would be renewable energy when it's done well, social housing, forms of health innovation, particularly where they serve vulnerable populations. We also talk a lot about social enterprise, and that they're essentially businesses that operate, their modus operandi is to create good through the outputs of the business. And basically there are a lot more terms, and some of them, synonymous with other terms, and some of them are similar but different. Basically, they all fit into this broader concept of the impact economy. And this notion of the impact economy is a reimagining of our current capitalist economy, but in a way where we can imagine our economy not creating harm, but actively creating positive change for our world, for the people living on our world, and also for the planet itself. So it puts caring for the earth and caring for people at the center of all financial decisions. So the economy doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's no invisible hand, despite Adam Smith and history telling us otherwise. It's not, there's no invisible hand. We are constructing our economy, and therefore we can construct it in a way that really benefits people and the planet. And so you can see there's a very clear alignment there with Laudato Si, and actually Pope Francis and the Vatican have an impact investing conference. I'm not sure if it happens annually, but it definitely does happen. And I think a key thing to remember about this whole concept is that there are different metrics of success at play. So you might, traditional investing says, okay, you're going to make X amount of money, and that's my goal. I just want to make X amount of money. But this whole economy goes, okay, I might create X amount of money, and that's certainly important. I need to live, or I need to, keep the assets of a company or a community I look after protected. But I'm going to try with that money to create really tangible, measurable impact with it. So it's reimagining the mechanisms of the economy, of the capitalist economy, for our own positive gain. And Alice, you were saying about, I guess, the connection with faith. I think, it's pretty self-explanatory, but I think one thing to remember is that a lot of people within the Catholic faith, as in any religious tradition, there are very wealthy people who are very strong Catholics, or very strong Christians, or who have deep spirituality and are looking to do good. I think there are so many opportunities available if we just switch our frame of reference and seek out a different way of investing, a different way of using our money, a different way of banking, of having superannuation. There are always other viable options, especially these days. I think there is so much movement behind the impact economy that it's only a matter of time. I say it's only a matter of time. I am the converted, so let's hope it's only a matter of time before people will get on board. I hope that answers the question.
No, absolutely. And I hope people get on board too. I'm just going to share 2 resources because I know teachers love knowing what resources are out there. So the Pope Francis sort of space and impact investing and stuff, the Economy of Francesco, I think is the main sort of body or group, and they're they have lots of resources online. If students are researching that as part of their assessment and all of those sorts of things, they can go there. The other thing too, this is not necessarily for kids, but in one of our other webinars that's coming up, we will be talking to Thea Ormerod, who is the head of ARC here in Australia, the Australian Religious Response to Climate Change. And they still run, I helped them set them up at the beginning, but they still run online sessions about divestment from superannuation, like specific banks and superannuation, all of those sorts of things. And I like the approach that they have is very gentle. Like it's a nice little starting point, I think, to this sort of thinking. So hopefully Thea will be able to share a little bit about that in our future one as well. But you can go online to their website to find out more about their sessions too. So I know in emailing between the two of us over the last couple of days, Jemima, you said that I posed you the question of, if you could just share one impact investment story that you wish everyone would know, can you please do that? And you said, I actually have 2. Can I share 2? So can you share those two stories with us?
Sure. There's never just one. I got really excited. It's like you pull out the scroll. Are you sure just one? There are so many. The great thing about impact investing and the impact economy is that these stories are feel good. You turn on the news these days and it's just horrendous. It is so awful. If I have to hear another story about Trump and tariffs, I will scream. But all of these stories in the impact economy are so uplifting, and they really do show that people are working tirelessly and quietly behind the scenes to do really good work. And they might not be jumping up and down about it, but it is happening. So the 2 stories I have, one has reference to, I guess, the environment, and one has reference more to communities living in poverty. And they're both from Australia, which I thought was important to show that there are local examples. The first one is, some of you may be familiar with the Adara Group. So the Adara Group was set up in, I think it was 1998, by a lady called Odette Excel, and she is a powerhouse. And basically, she set up this business, which is called the Adara Group, and it has two parts to it. The first part is the Adara Development, and it's an international development organisation that has very specific expertise in maternal, newborn and child health and remote community development. And they do a lot of work in different parts of Africa and Nepal. So Nepal and Uganda, I think. So you've got this one part of Adara Group, which is Adara Development. You've then got the other part of Adara Group, which is called, it's split into two businesses, Adara Partners and Advisors. Yeah, so they're a consulting group, and basically they're a very high-powered consulting group, and they exist for purpose rather than for profit. So all of the, basically their sole objective is to fund Adara development. So you have people, you know, working in a normal business capacity in a very high-powered way, but their funds, their 100% of donations are basically coming. Are basically going to Adara development, and the work they do is phenomenal. The second example, and I'll go to the second example before I show how they're sort of connected. The second example is probably well known by everybody. It's Who Gives a Crap toilet paper. And, yeah, and they're great. They were started in Australia, and Simon
currently using their toilet paper right now.
It's fantastic. Well, Simon,
so
the CEO, is great. And Alan English, who is my boss for many, many years, wonderful man. He was actually their first investor, their first impact investor. And basically, Simon had this great idea where he was going to take toilet paper, which is something so basic and everyday, and he was going to turn it into a for-impact or for-purpose organization. And so 50%, if you don't know about it, it's those really colorful toilet rolls that you often see in cafes if you don't have them in your own house. And basically, 50% of all their profits go towards building toilets and improving sanitary facilities in what they say developing world, but actually that is not the phrase that is now used. It's the global south. The toilet paper itself is made from forest-friendly materials. It's recyclable. It's post-consumer waste paper or bamboo fibers. It's incredible. It doesn't come in plastic. It comes in these great boxes with these wonderful puns and puzzles on the side of it that you get, you know, delivered by Australia Post. And they're just phenomenal. And since they started, so since Alan gave them that foundational investment, I think they've donated over $10 million towards global sanitation projects for 2.3 billion people in need. So I'm throwing statistics around, but basically that is a huge impact for a single social innovation startup that happened in Australia. And, you know, now I was, you know, I was overseas a couple of years ago, and I was seeing Who Gives a Crap toilet paper overseas, and I was getting all excited. So you never see someone get so excited about toilet paper. But how those things are connected is that they're both examples of impact investing, and they're both, one is more tangible investment. Who Gives a Crap takes on impact investment capital from investors, whether individuals or funds. They then use those funds to grow the business. 50% of those profits go off towards creating these amazing sanitation projects. You've then got, you know, Adara Group, which is, to all intents and purposes, Adara Advisors and Adara Partners are just a mainstream consulting firm, you know, people at the top of their career. But what's going on behind the scenes is this incredible international development work that is really evidence informed. And so I know, I've spoken to Odette. I've seen some of the work they do. It is phenomenal. So they're both examples of, they're not philanthropy, they're not charity. They are using existing market mechanisms to create good, to really shift the dial and to get people thinking about what can be achieved with money. Money is not, it is not something intrinsically bad. It is a neutral force, and it just so happens that impact will come around depending where we direct it. So very exciting to see more and more stories like that emerging.
Yeah, no, I love it. I do remember Simon from Who Gives a Crap did a talk at my university when I was at uni, and I still remember it because it was just, he was so funny. I think that was the thing. And I mean, the fact that you've got puns on toilet paper boxes and on, your little rolls. Do you have them in Canada and in Rome, Rebecca? You guys don't have,
yeah,
you are missing out.
I've seen it, but it could just be that I've never seen it. I'm definitely gonna look at those.
Yeah, they're so popular here in Australia. Like, I think there's a lot of people that use them. But I remember at the time, the term he was using was consumer-driven philanthropy. That was the term at the time, but it was impact investing. Like, that was.
It is, because there's new language that's emerged. We were stuck for so many years on how to actually describe this impact, and the problem has been that people, investment, as we know, is a very closed circle, and people in investing like to think they know it all, but what's happening now is that we're getting a language, we're getting a framework for how to talk about these things. And so now you're getting these terms like impact investing, impact economy, catalytic philanthropy, etc., that are coming through, that are really helping us to pinpoint what it is exactly that's happening, rather than people just going, oh, people are giving us money to do really great stuff, it must be philanthropy, which isn't always the case.
Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah, awesome. So I'm just going to jump to one of the questions that came in the chat, and then I'll jump back to you, Rebecca. So there was a question from, I think it was Tammy, about whether Laudato Si mentions anything about vegetarianism or veganism. I'm happy to just jump in on that because I've gone through and tried to find, there isn't anything explicit. Like, it's not like the Pope says, we should becoming vegan and we should become vegetarianism. And I think it's all very relative as well with those two concepts, because, if you come from a community that are subsistence farming and then you're trading with, people, communities that are fishing, that's part of your livelihood. And, we need to bear all that in mind, that for some of us, especially, we talk about this here in Australia, that to be vegan or to be vegetarian can sometimes be a mark of privilege. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear my dogs in the background. They've decided to just bark for some reason. They can probably hear me talking about meat and they go a bit crazy. Anyway, so so there's no explicit references, but there is sort of mentioned, like it is mentioned in Laudato Si about how we need to think about things like farming and where our food comes from and all those sorts of things. And I do think, because it is a controversial topic with many different people about, what diets people choose to have and all of those sorts of things. But for students to look at Laudato Si from an analytical perspective, that's a really great exercise, I think, for them to do, to say, how can people reconcile that in their faith if that is a choice that they are wanting to make. I also know there's, I don't know if anything's been published yet, but in Sydney, one of my friends who works down in the Archdiocese down there was looking at sort of this concept of diet and the environment and how other faiths, so you look at Buddhism and Islam and Judaism, and how they all have quite strict dietary things like, there's halal, there's kosher, there's most Buddhists are vegetarian or vegan anyway. But in Christianity, that doesn't really happen. There's we used to do the no fish on Friday thing, but it's only fish on Friday thing, but it doesn't really happen. And there's sort of a resurgence of perhaps trying to look at that again. So I know there was some people working on that. Anyway, that was a bit of a diversion. So I'm going to turn back to Rebecca now. and ask a bit more about this book. So I know when you were printing the book, so if you get a printer copy, you guys made a point of making sure that it was printed of sorry, I can't even speak now, FSC certified paper, which was clearly very important for you guys to have sort of integrity in this ecology space. But was that really hard to make happen for, to organize that?
Mm-hmm. Actually, before I answer that, I'd just weigh in for a second on the
Absolutely.
the question.
Yeah.
Everything that you said is right. And I just wanted to share one quote from Laudato Si. I'm actually doing another presentation on Laudato Si in like an hour from now, and I had pulled this one. Because some people's motivations for eating a vegetarian diet are very, very diverse. But if anyone is interested in it from a sort of animal rights standpoint, something that this does say in Laudato Si, and I have the quote here. I don't just like memorize Laudato Si quotes. Some I do, not this one. I'm going to read it. He says, "The same wretchedness which leads us to mistreat an animal will not be long in showing itself in our relationships with other people. Every act of cruelty towards any creature is contrary to human dignity." So that's a nice little piece of wisdom from Laudato Si. It's sort of in line with that question. Anyways, paper. Not as fun as Australian toilet paper, but book paper. So how difficult it was, actually it was Simon who arranged this. He was the one that was dealing all the publishers, since that's his expertise. So I don't know if it was difficult to arrange, but obviously it wasn't impossible. But doing that and making that decision and making these arrangements came down to a belief that we both shared from the very beginning, which was that if we're going to make this book about Laudato Si, it should be a book that lives Laudato Si. So that's why we printed it on eco-friendly paper. That's why we, the colors weren't crazy. It wasn't like this crazy like coffee table book or anything like that. That's why we made sure to get inputs from every single region of the world. That's why we took care to balance female and male voices and to include Indigenous voices as well. There's lots of fine details that Simon and I were paying attention to that maybe people won't even notice if they read the book, but we wanted to make the book itself as Laudato Si, if we can turn it into an adjective, as possible. And so if it wasn't going to forward the message of Laudato Si, we didn't want it as part of the book, either in content or in the physical product itself.
Oh, I love that. And I think that speaks very much to what a lot of our teachers do when they're teaching Laudato Si, is that they try and make, every practice that they're doing in that point in time, about that. So it's, now they have a resource that is also Laudato Si for when they teach it, which is great. So I just wanted to also talk to you about your role with Caritas, which is all about youth. And that was how we met, of course, was I am still considered a young person for another 5 years in the context of the church. And Rebecca, you asked me to come to, well, I applied and then you asked me to come to New York to do some advocacy in the youth space over there. So apart from the stories that are in the book that you share and that you found and all those sorts of things, what are some other stories about young people in the area of Laudato Si and Catholic social teaching and justice that you wish were told that are missing?
I'm like Jemima, I can't pick just one. So let me start by acknowledging that there's too many, but I won't take up too much time either. Just to say there's a lot, and it would be really hard to whittle down to one example. Because there are so many young people, especially in Caritas, who are moving the needle on these things. And maybe to share an example close to home, to your home for you guys. The Oceania region in Caritas has a really strong youth network called the Caritas Oceania Youth Alliance, COYA for short. And they do a lot of really good advocacy for climate issues and social issues as well. So they visit Parliament, they talk to MPs. I'm not sure if it's an annual thing. You may know better than me, Alice, whether the trip to Parliament to meet with MPs to talk about these issues is an annual thing. Anyways, point is they do it, which is a really brave thing to do, because governments are so influential in these issues. And so this is a group of young people who are going as a collective from lots of different countries in the Oceania region to say, like, listen, this message is important to us and we want you to pay attention to it. It could be intimidating for for anybody, never mind a young person, to walk into Parliament and share these stories and express these demands, but they do it, and they do it very well. So I would say that group is certainly a big source of inspiration for me. They also represent Caritas at various UN forums, including our Alice here, as she briefly said, but I don't want that to get lost. She did a great job. She represented Caritas at the high-level political forum at the UN in New York last year. And that's the UN forum that reviews the Sustainable Development Goals. So at that, she spoke at a side event along with another young representative from Caritas Czech Republic. We attended all of the sessions together. And so getting young people into these spaces, these decision-making spaces, is a really key thing. And the fact that there's so many young people who are willing to go and, to speak very well and to bring these issues to these spaces is really inspiring. And maybe I'll just close by sharing one piece of just to drive home why this is important. I'll share a piece of information that we learned when we surveyed our entire confederation, which is very extensive. We have 162 member organizations all around the world, including Caritas Australia. And so we asked our members what they value young people for the most in their work. So in other words, what do young people add? What value do young people add to our organizations that are working on all of these issues that Pope Francis talks about in Laudato Si? And their top three answers were creativity, energy, and helping us to be innovative and develop new ways of working. And we know, I don't know if anybody would dispute this, to tackle the, ecological and social issues that Pope Francis talks about in Laudato Si, we need to be innovative, and we need to think outside the box, and we need to work in new ways. So in a way, young people are actually the key to solving these big, complex, wicked problems. And the best thing we can all do is to listen to them and empower them to participate in these spaces authentically as creative and energetic and innovative young people.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I've just put in the chat, which I'm hoping David will relay to everyone, that the Caritas Youth Report, which is, it's an interesting read. I've read it. And yeah, the Pacific Emerging Leaders Conference that Koya is part of, I'm pretty certain it does happen every year, or at least every 2 years. It'd be very frequent. And Sabrina Stevens, who I used to work with, she was very very prominent in organizing that, and the focus on Oceania, all of the Oceania voices, which was something that when I was at the high level political forum, I distinctly remember wasn't there. Like, there was very, very few people from Samoa, Tonga, Kiribati, PNG, like they just weren't there. And I was like, where are their voices, and why are they not being heard? And a lot of it is just they can't get to New York. That was a huge thing. So that's why I think, especially advocating to the Australian government, that's really important. And the work that Caritas does do in that space, I think, is also incredibly important and worth studying, kind of as a case study for our young people to look at, and also to be involved with as well. So well, I think we've pretty much come to the end of time. So I just, maybe any quick final comments before we hand back to David, who's going to share about all of our ways to get a hold of the book.
Maybe just another big thank you for having me with you today. And that I hope that the book that we're talking about, this Generation Laudato Si, is a helpful resource for you. There's reflection questions in there that can help you just start discussions with your students. Ultimately, Simon and I wanted this thing to be helpful, not just a collection of testimonies that would gather dust on a shelf one day. Just a book to be used to add your own voice to these conversations. And so, yeah, I'll just echo what I said. Getting young people talking, listening to what they say, is one of the best things we can do to work on these issues. And I hope that the book will be a resource to help everybody to do that.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. And thank you for taking time out of your day too.
Indeed. Rebecca, sorry, Alice, go ahead.
I just thought Jemima was going to Were you going to say something, Jem?
To echo, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to join you and to share a few exciting stories that certainly get me excited anyway. When I was thinking about this evening, I wanted to share with you a quote that has really stuck with me through all of this work, because I think it taps into the way we think about Laudato Si and its connection to the economy and all the different facets of our lives. If I could just share it, it's a very brief quote. It's from a book called Journey to Impact, which was released by Small Giants, based in Melbourne, a few years ago. And it's by a person called Nipan Mehta. And it says, we need to shift, I'm going to read it because it's right here. We need to shift from extractive systems to more regenerative systems. Some of that will have to do with a redesign of money, and some will have to do with the way we relate, in the ways in which we relate to money. I don't think it's just an external systems issue. Any sustainable solution has to bring external impact along with inner transformation in a very real way. And I think that ties into our discussion tonight with Laudato Si and faith and all the things in between, that it has to start with inner transformation and the little steps. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jemima. And I think Rebecca, Alice and Jemima, I think people could sit and listen for another hour without blinking an eye. It's been a wonderful journey and just such a snapshot. But I think, one of the things that resonated with me, Rebecca, was when you were mentioning about we're not listening, or we need to listen to young people. And that's a great segue, I think, to the book, because this should be fundamental reading for any students who might be in year 9 to 12, because this can open up the dialogue that is absolutely necessary in schools. And it can inspire young people. So it is a wonderful resource. We're very happy to bring it to Australians, and there'll be people in the Garrett community who joined us last night for some sessions on Lent, and there'll be some people here tonight who will find this book really, really beneficial. Even people who are not teachers and not being used in a school. If you're a more mature member of the Catholic community, it's still really relevant that you can actually listen and hear from young people and their thoughts and their dreams and their hopes and their fears. So it's a great resource. I am going to share a couple of resources that Garrett do, because we have, really, we strongly believe, as soon as I read Laudato Si, I felt it was such an important piece of work, and over the 10 years we've released a wide range of resources. This is a great book for ecological spirituality. So it takes up the mantle of Laudato Si, but goes beyond that as well. And so that's a great resource to actually look at how ecology and faith intermingle, which was again another theme throughout the evening. And then we do have reading guides for teachers, professional development, for discussion in amongst your parish group, formal parish group or informal faith groups that exist today outside of the institutional church. So Care for Our Common Home is really an outline of Laudato Si with some reference really to the Australian context. So, what are the real key issues here in Australia? They're universal, but if we put them into an Australian context, they may have more meaning. And then we did that as well on the climate crisis. So Pope Francis released Laudate
Laudato Deum.
Thank you very much. In 2023, so it just seems like yesterday, but again, it takes up the mantle as well. And Alice, I think you had a little bit to do with that one as well. And then for younger students and younger people, we've just released We Care for God's Creation, which is a wonderful little book, for the younger readers, to explore, Laudato Si and ecology and sustainability in a simple, easy way for young children. So a great way to introduce some of that for foundation or kindergarten to sort of grade 3 level as well. And then for the sort of mid-year schools, We Care for God's Earth, we've just released as well this year. This comes with online teacher resources. So for grade 4, 5, 6, 7, this resource is, I'm biased on all of these. These are outstanding resources, as you could imagine, but we're really pleased to bring these world-class titles. These particularly are world-class titles. There's one on the Bible, there's one on Jesus and justice, and there's one on care for our common home. There'll be one next year on parables and miracles as well. So they're just a small collection. We will release the video. We'll tidy up some of the technology challenges that we had earlier in the evening on the video. So we will do that over the course of the next week. And I will close the webinar by saying thank you very much again to Alice, Jemima and Rebecca for donating their time, making the time to speak to everybody who's been on this webinar tonight. I hope everybody's got benefit. I think everybody has. With some of the chat comments are coming through now, and lots of thank yous and thanks. It's been very beneficial. So we've touched some hearts and minds today, and I hope many people who are on this webinar go out as well and touch the hearts and minds in their communities to try to care for our world and our earth and our society and our ecosystems in such difficult times as well. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording now so everybody can go and get some dinner or breakfast or brunch, as the case may be for Rebecca. Make sure you get a cappuccino before the time closes. Otherwise, you'll be in strife. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a great night and God bless.